We did get some heavy snowfall this week, but much of the week was relatively mild temperatures with the sun shining down. And on one sunny morning, a flock of bluebirds graced the sanctuary with their presence. It looks like this young buck has survived the hunting season. The deer hunting season lasted about 3 months, from October through most of December. This hunting season also corresponds with deer breeding. The antlers on this guy show that he is sexually mature, but it's unlikely that he did any breeding. The older, more dominant bucks with the big racks probably kept all the does for themselves. The does are still hungry in the mornings. The winters can be rough on the deer. They have to expend more energy keeping warm and tromping through high snows, while at the same time, the food seems to be more scarce. But we make life easier for them, and not only by feeding them. By skiing the trails every day, we pack down the snow, therefore making their travels easier. Once this alpha doe's done eating, the other 2 deer will get their share at the food source. Crows have it tough too during the winter, but humans help them as well, even if the help is unintentional. These crows are engaging in a behavior known as gritting. Since crows don't have teeth for masticating, the large chunks of food they eat get broken down in their gizzards. When food reaches their gizzards, it gets tumbled around with small rocks or sand and ground down into finer, easier to digest material. Some dinosaurs did the same thing, and these polished rocks have been found with their fossilized bones. So these crows are ingesting the sand that the salt trucks drop in order to give the roads more traction. Many mammals are known to lick the salt up off the roads from these salt trucks. Hopefully, none of these end up in a collision with a car. The annual Christmas bird count a couple weeks ago had some pretty low numbers. This was mostly due to the blizzard that was happening all morning of the count. However, the number of robins counted was probably a record high since the count started in Oneida County. There was a whopping 957. Had the conditions not been so poor, the number probably would have been even higher than that. Robins are one of the few birds around here that don't utilize our bird feeders as a food source. They don't eat seed, rather berries and fruits such as these wild grapes. The grape yield was high this year, which seems to be keeping the robins happy. They are also strong flyers, so the wind does not seem to be affecting them too much. Robins also forage through the leaf litter all winter where the ground is not frozen. These areas tend to be near creeks or places where water is seeping out of the ground. They upturn every leaf, so it's easy to see where they have been. They are looking for invertebrates such as insects and worms and snails. It's hard to believe that they find them in the winter, but obviously they must. After about 30 minutes or so, the robins moved on. I went to investigate their foraging grounds to see if I could find what they were finding. At first glance, there was seemingly nothing there, but after a closer look, I did find life forms. First was this little orange critter, which looks to me a lot like a mite. It also seems to me that it appears to be sifting through detritus, perhaps foraging itself. Maybe these are what the robins were after? Or maybe it was this critter. I have no idea what this is, but it looks like it could be some form of insect larva. It too seemed to be sifting through the detritus for food. They forage right next to each other, unbothered by one another's presence. At a couple points, they actually seem to be foraging on top of each other, but not harming one another. And another little guy zooms by quickly. They seemed unbothered by that green thing also. These animals are minuscule, so if this is what the robins were foraging on, it would have taken a lot of them to satiate their hunger. When zoomed in like this, it is difficult to get a feel for the size of these little critters, but they're probably about the equivalent of a grain of rice. The following day, I started looking other places for minute life forms, such as in the bark of this willow tree. I did find these tiny holes bored into it, as well as the smallest snail I've ever seen. Later, I found a spider in the snow. It was moving very slowly, so I wonder if it was cold and fell out of a tree. Over at the creek, there was another emergence of stoneflies. They are quite curious. Highly active, but they don't seem to be foraging. Many species of stonefly do feed on plant material once they're adults, but I don't think these do. As with the last time I saw them in this spot, about 2 weeks ago, they were only out for 1 day. I am beginning to think they have very short lifespans as adults. Many insects breed and die within 1 day of adulthood. That's probably true with these guys, but they don't even seem to be interacting with each other. This white stonefly does provide evidence that they did emerge as adults today. Usually, when insects molt, they don't regain color in their skin for an hour or so. So this one is obviously freshly molted. And this looks like the skin that the stonefly left behind in its final molt. And this ends another week at the sanctuary.